Hello everyone and welcome to the ProsperNet webinar on sustainability in higher education. Thank you for joining us. My name is Miki Konishi, a program coordinator of ESD project at United Nations University, Institute for the Advanced Study of Sustainability, UNU-IAS. It's my honor to serve as the MC today. Before we officially start the webinar, I'd like to make an announcement. If you have any questions during the panel discussion, you may type them in the Q&A box. Please make sure to indicate to which panelist you would like to address the question. Thank you for your cooperation. Now, I'd like to invite our UNU-IAS Director, Professor Shinobu Yume Yamaguchi, to officially open the ProsperNet webinar on sustainability in higher education. Professor Yamaguchi, floor is yours.
And thank you very much, Madam Chairman, for your introduction. Distinguished guests, honorable colleagues, and ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honor and pleasure to host the ProsperNet webinar on sustainability in higher education, accelerating transition toward achieving the SDGs during and after the COVID-19 pandemic, when each of us are feeling an impact of the pandemic, negative or positive. Yes, positive particularly, because we can hold this web seminar with over 300 registrations from all over Japan and beyond today. Taking this opportunity, I'd like to extend my warmest welcome to all of the participants. First of all, my heartfelt thanks goes to the panelist, Director of the International Association of Universities, the representative from our 3 ProsperNet member universities, Gajah Mada University, Asian Institute of Technology, and Sophia University. The COVID-19 has seriously affected economies, societies, and the environment around the world, and its impact has been experienced across the sectors. Higher education institutions have needed to adapt this unprecedented situation in all areas, including teaching, learning, research, and community engagement, on top of all the responsibilities already existed in our lives. So many of you would agree that we do need 30 hours a day to survive the everyday's work in this pandemic situation. In fact, this pandemic forces us to take a fundamental shift in our mindset and how we lead our life in a society, asking ourselves the questions every day. We are surrounded by even more huge amount of the news, correct or incorrect, and therefore the academic and science communities have a key role to play, assisting individuals and communities in building back better through evidence-based policymaking and educating current and future generations. So I really believe it is the time for the higher educational institution to rethink and redesign our strategies to envision mid and long-term scenarios to cope with the challenges brought forward and degraded by the pandemic. The ProsperNet Promotion of Sustainability in Postgraduate Education Research Network, our network gathered here today, is one of the flagship projects of UNU-IAS, and we are very much proud to host the Secretariat of the Network. It is in fact an alliance of 50 leading academic institutions from 15 countries in Asia and Pacific region. The network embodies the collective determination and aspiration to contribute to the achievement of inclusive, resilient, and more sustainable societies. UNU-IAS this year conducted an in-depth survey mobilizing the ProsperNet network to examine their responses to the pandemic and what their concerns and opportunities are as we continue to struggle with the pandemic and its impact. And we have found that redesigning and reorientation of the higher education system was mentioned as critical by the vast majority of the respondents, stressing the need for the system thinking, namely the ability to analyze complex systems across environmental, society, social, and economic domains in building back better. Some of those key findings of the survey will be presented by our research fellow later in this panel session. So please do look forward to those findings. In this web seminar today, I am happy to announce that panelists will share their experiences and discuss challenges and opportunities for higher educational institutions from a short, midterm, and long-term perspectives during and after the COVID-19 era. Moreover, it will be highlighted how academic and science community can contribute and accelerate the transition toward achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. I very much look forward to hearing the rich experiences of the speakers and getting some innovative ideas. We also welcome feedback from the audience very actively. In closing, I'd like to thank again all the panelists and the moderator and my colleague, Professor Tabukanon, and the participants. I also extend our special appreciation to the Ministry of the Environment of Japan for their continued support for your work with the ProsperNet network. I hope this webinar will be a great opportunity to stimulate our brain and further discuss and act toward the sustainable future. Thank you very much for your attention, and please enjoy the day.
Thank you very much, Professor Yamaguchi, for your opening remarks. Next, I would like to show the video message from Ms. Kiyoka Miki, Director of Office of Environmental Education, Ministry of the Environment of Japan.
Hello everyone, I'm Miki Kiyoka, Director of the Office of Environmental Education at Ministry of the Environment, Japan. It is my great honor to give these opening remarks. As you all know, the ProsperNet is a flagship program on ESD, which is conducted by UNU-IAS, fully funded by Japanese government from the beginning since 2003. On behalf of the funding supporter, I would like to take this opportunity to say a few words through this video message. First and foremost, I would like to thank all the ProsperNet members for your efforts in promoting ESD in order to realize a sustainable society. Also, thank you to the host UNU-IAS, especially the Director Dr. Yamaguchi, the Program Head Dr. Takemoto, and their Secretariat. The researches and activities each of you are engaged in are making a substantial contribution not only to academic progress, but also to development of future leaders who could pick up the pace of our move towards the sustainable society from an academic standpoint of view. Needless to say, to achieve SDGs and accelerate its actions, leaders with a lot of knowledge and profound insights are essential in the society. In this regard, we believe that the ProsperNet represents an irreplaceable community of practice with a very important mission for our society. At this point, I wish to emphasize that we should not stop our steps towards a sustainable society, although the long-term shutdown of universities might have prevented you from researching. For this reason, I am looking forward to hearing of any realizations or practical insights we will gain from these discussions, which broaden your network and strengthen our partnership within this meeting. I expect you to become regional leaders who implement the motto, "Building Back Better," in the new normal that emerges from this pandemic. To do this, we encourage you to explore methods to coexist with COVID-19 on the path to SDGs and ESD, while continuing to work in cooperation with people across borders and across generations. Lastly, but not least, I would like to send my sincerest wishes to all of you, your families and friends, and those around you, safe and health in this very difficult time. Let us help each other, let us take hands each other, and overcome this challenge together. I hope this meeting will become a meaningful one for each of us. Thank you.
Thank you for watching the video. Again, we'd like to extend our sincere appreciation to Ministry of Environment, Japan. Now let's move on to the panel discussion. I'd like to introduce our moderator of the panel discussion, Professor Mario Tapkanen, who is a visiting professor of UNU-IAS. Professor Tapkanen, please.
Thank you for the introduction, Madam Master of Ceremony. And good day, everyone. It is my distinct honor and privilege to serve as moderator for the panel discussion on sustainability in higher education, accelerating transitions towards achieving the SDGs during and after COVID-19 pandemic. I am delighted to welcome you all. We have an outstanding panel who will share experiences and deliberate the challenges and opportunities for higher education institutions during and post-COVID-19 era, and explore build back better options in order to accelerate transition to achieving the SDGs. The panel will address key issues, including pandemic impacts on SDGs, strategies pertinent to research, education and outreach, and how institutions coordinate within the various faculties, departments, and other academic units to build back better, as well as on the wide range of issues on sustainability in higher education, which is the overarching theme of this webinar. The panel is comprised of prominent individuals in the field of higher education, and I am privileged to introduce them here and now. Dr. HEls van Tland serves the global higher education community as Secretary General of the International Association of Universities, or IAU, which is the global NGO with UNESCO associate status. She holds a PhD degree in comparative Francophone literature and publishes on a number of higher education issues. Dr. Philip Walter is a research fellow at UNU-IAS Education for Sustainable Development Program. He holds a PhD degree in conservation biology with a focus on environmental policy. He conducts research on sustainability issues in higher education. And we have panelists from 3 ProsperNet member institutions, as mentioned by our UNU-IAS Director, Professor Yamaguchi earlier. Representing Universitas Gadjah Mada, Indonesia is Professor Irfan Bilia Piliambada, Director of Community Services. Irfan is a Professor of Agricultural Microbiology and holds a PhD degree in Fermentation Technology from Osaka University. Representing the Asian Institute of Technology is Professor Deepak Sharma, Vice President for Academic Affairs, and he holds the title of Emeritus Professor at the University of Technology, Sydney, and holds a PhD degree in Energy, Economics, and Policy. Last but not least, representing Sophia University is Professor Miki Sugimura, Vice President for Global Academic Affairs. She holds a PhD degree from the University of Tokyo with research interests in international migration, multicultural education, and international higher education. So here they are, indeed an outstanding panel. Without further ado, let's get started. To our first panelist, it gives me great pleasure to call on Dr. HEls van 't Land to make a presentation. The floor is yours, HEls. Please.
Thank you very much, Mario. Thank you very much, Professor Yumi Yamaguchi. Thank you very much to the Minister of Japan, and very good day to all the panelists with whom I have had on different occasions opportunities to also work with. It is a great honor to be with you today because it is a long journey that we have traveled along the way. Some of you I know for almost 17 years, working on advancing sustainable development in different opportunities, because it was about sustainable development, much about environmental education at the start of things. But then we very quickly moved into education for sustainable development. Education for all was a big part of the overall agenda. And today we have all adopted, also at the university, Agenda 2030. And so I prepared a little presentation that I would like to share here, but I hope it will certainly also offer the opportunity to discuss further later. So I don't know why this is like this, but this is the slides. I hope you can see them. Can you see them?
Not yet, but hopefully.
No. You cannot see them? Does it not show? Then, because I used the screen sharing and I don't know where then I need to go. Here, I think. Can you see it now?
Okay, thank you. We can see it now.
Okay. So this is the very important part here is the term accelerating transition towards achieving the SDGs, because we know that we've been working on advancing sustainable development at universities for a long time. And there is an enormous amount of work that's being done. And our hope is that COVID-19 has not stopped this, on the contrary, but that it has shown, as said by Professor Yamaguchi as well, that this is a period where people actually rethink what we do and how we can move into the future better and all together. So just very quickly, a few information pieces on the background from where I speak. The IAU was created and called into life by UNESCO in 1950, and we celebrate 70 years of international cooperation. We reach out to 20,000 higher education institutions from around the world and work with all the delegations to UNESCO to advance different topics. On our strategic plan, we have 4 key priority areas of work that actually are interconnected. It is for better informed, globally engaged leadership, The second one is for better globally engaged internationalization and meaningful, inclusive internationalization, not for the sake of mobility, but for better research, a point that was also made by the previous opening remarks. It is about higher education and research for sustainable development. And we also work on technology-driven transformation of higher education, something that should help advance for the future of societies at large. And so we carry out global surveys, we have portals, we do reach out to the global higher education community, and we're very pleased to work with other networks, and in particular with ProsperNet, and also with UNU-IAS. There we have a long history as well, because actually one of your previous rectors, Professor Hans van Ginkel, was also president of the IAU. And when he was president of the IAU and rector of UNU, he made many very constructive connections between our worlds and pushed for sustainable development in a very creative, strong, and committed way. And so today with Rector Malone, we pursue that into the future, and we're pleased that this topic is so important. We, for instance, are very pleased to always also support the RCE initiatives that are so important for gathering the overall and systemic approach to sustainable development. So what do we do in terms of sustainable development? We've developed statements that universities have picked up and that make the connection between universities and our societies. And the latest one is the IAU Iquitos statement, to also bring in the different knowledge systems into the discourse, so that we don't speak from only one part of the world, but from all the parts of the world. And that statement was picked up also at the World Conference in Aichi, Nagoya, and was part of the discussions on how to better include sustainable development in a systemic way at higher education level. Our strategy is an ABC one: A for advocacy and analysis, B for building synergies and networks, C for communicating and convening. And that is how we hope that to advance and also propel the work of universities to a higher level. And it usually is through connecting the unconnected that we see sparks of innovation in all parts of the world. So we work with surveys. We just carried out the second IAU Global Survey on Higher Education and Research for Sustainable Development. That's available for free on the website. And we will carry out a third one, and maybe we can do that one with ProsperNet. And we've discussed it with Yumi Yamaguchi as well, because there is also the other dimensions of our work with different surveys that we carry out that only gain more attention and are becoming better if they're done together, because we need to also break down the silos of competition and rather work together in a more constructive way along the way. And that is what we do with you, and I'm very pleased and honored with this cooperation over time. So the resources are made available online, and that is what all can use. And it is one of the answers, I would say, also to the first of your questions. What are the challenges and opportunities? The challenges is that we face many problems. The opportunities is that we can share them, and also the solutions that we have. So we build, when Agenda 2030 was adopted, we build a global cluster on higher education and research for sustainable development. Maybe it's a bit similar to ProsperNet with your 50 illustrious universities over 15 countries. We also wanted to see how university engaged with all the different SDGs. And so 16 of the IAU member universities took the lead on each and every of these SDGs, and around them developed a cluster of universities, each time from the 5 continents. So the restriction was that one. You had to find partners all over the world. And that's how universities have gone to develop a network of satellite universities around SDGs, not to silo them, but to build and construct dynamics across all the different SDGs. So today we have a network of some 80 higher education institutions, but it is spreading, and universities, even in this period of time, are coming to see how they can get involved and contribute to the discourse and different initiatives that are being picked up. There's a lot of research in there, in particular, to look at how universities can address the SDGs and all the different facets of it. So we carried out also a survey on the impact of COVID-19 on higher education. And some of the conclusions are those that you know. The crisis has affected all institutions in different ways. We've discussed it at length with the rector of the Asian Institute of Technology, for instance. We've discussed it at length with many universities in Japan. We've discussed it around the world, and the crisis takes on many different forms that call for many different approaches, but certainly concerted ones. What was very interesting and very promising for the future is that universities have been called to the table by governments. And that is maybe something new, not in the same way as in the past, but actually to sit at the table to find the kind of solutions that we need to move into the future. Many of the universities have moved online, and that we know as well. So it was a crisis management for a long time, but we now also know that many universities have worked very hard to go back to ensure that the quality is there and that it's not all about technique, but it is about content. And that is a real opportunity you will see as well in our discussions, I am sure, that the tech-driven transformation of higher education is providing for even better connection when it comes to sustainable development initiatives. How do we exchange on that? What do we learn from each other? How do we connect our realities, and how do we connect our research opportunities, learning engagement, and even community engagement? But yet there is a high risk of growing inequalities among universities as well, those who have and those who have not, those who can access the systems today, but also the very real danger of seeing universities lose all of their financial means in order to address all the different facets of what they need to do. Professor Yamaguchi said it, we need more than 30 hours a day now to do our jobs. We had a lot on our plate and we have even more to do. So what will you let go? Is it sustainable development? And we hope not, because that is actually where more emphasis should be put and where more work together should be developed so that we can actually move into the future in a better manner. The COVID-19 has shown as well negative consequences for internationalization and research. And that is what we need to address in this session as well, because we need strong international cooperation in order to move into the future and ensure that we will not silo out. Japan will work only with Japan, France only with France, the Netherlands only in the Nordic region. So we need to really look at how to continue to have these intercontinental dialogues in a very proactive way. In ProsperNet, that's exactly what you're doing as well. So that's where we connect.
You please observe the time, please.
Yes, I have only a few more minutes because this was to introduce actually also the next slide. So the very important point here is that higher education are innovative and resilient. They play a major role at different levels. And that is what universities can showcase better today and what is being recognized by governments as well. So the global surveys, the webinars, joint efforts are the response also to the educational inequalities. And IAU as a network, you've asked that question, is engaging with many around the world to actually support dynamics, but also contribute to it. One that is mentioned here is the UNESCO Global Education Coalition, to which we contribute in quality and many initiatives, but also we sit on the advisory group of the UNESCO Future of Education Initiative, also with some of the colleagues here in the session. So the challenges are many: financial risks, enrollment risk, parochialism, growing inequalities, loss of relevance. But there are real opportunities and there are new means to do things together, new ways of working together, breaking down silos, breaking down walls between our realities, better opportunities to get to know each other and esteem what we do. So there is an increased access to these roundtables. That was not the case in the past. There is a better global engagement opportunity with local relevance, which may lead to more equality in the end if we do it right. So the social relevance of all that is done and the societal relevance is of key importance. So we've offered the opportunity of a global cluster on HESD, and I believe that our networks are even better equipped to in the future also address these issues together. I thank you for now and look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, HEls, for sharing what IAU is working on through your strategy on higher education and research for Sustainable Development, for giving us some insights on the impact of COVID-19 within the IAU community. Now on to the next panelist. It gives me great pleasure to call on Dr. Philip Voter to make a presentation. The floor is yours, Philip. Philip, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mario. So going from the global to our own network, I would like to take this opportunity to present a little bit about some of the research that we've done with all of you over the past few months. As she mentioned, we took the opportunity to do a survey of how ProsperNet member institutes were experiencing the different aspects of the COVID pandemic, both your opportunities and your challenges. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about some of that data and hopefully some next steps on the way forward. So this should come as no surprise to you. Some of the challenges that were reported during the survey, overwhelmingly, ProsperNet institutions face campus closure, and almost all of these institutions therefore moved classes online. This was very much seen in the rest of the world. And so the good news is there was very little cancellation of class, but we did see a big shift in modality. One moment, kindly. In terms of challenges and opportunities, some other more nuanced challenges that the institutions reported experiencing were delays in the academic year, and of course the implementation of international programs. International programs have a long history of international exchange of both students and faculty, and of course that's been disrupted. And unfortunately, there was a lot of expression about how it was difficult to plan not only for this year, but future years for international study programs and research programs. However, there was concern across the board for not just the short-term implementation of programs for students, but also students' graduation and job security as we look at possible recession globally. And of course, with that recession, issues of student scholarships. So all of these issues were brought up within ProsperNet members. One of the interesting aspects was, though, while about 40% were concerned about the university's income, the real attention by the institutes were actually on the students' futures. So the news is not all gloomy. We have actually really positive responses about how faculty, even though they weren't familiar with using online tools, online lectures became very popular, and faculty actually wanted training in more effective virtual lecture techniques. That was one of the overwhelming appreciations of what's experienced during COVID. And I think one of the other really interesting insights is that compared to regions like Europe and North America, there wasn't a lot of expression of concern about security software. So within ProsperNet member institutions, they felt pretty confident with their institution's ability to keep online content safe and secure. All right. So moving from the present and then looking into the future, how are we looking at, or how is the network looking at contributions that academic networks such as ProsperNet can make in responding to not only the pandemic itself, but some of the inequalities during the pandemic? So one of the things that almost all stressed was we need real criteria that can be matched not only to other universities, but between different countries. There was a lot of frustration expressed by the fact that reopening criteria has been constantly changing. And even though talking about travel corridors started as early as February, there's been very little progress on this, mainly because the data metrics keep changing for institutions based on their national policies. That being said, member institutes were very keen to look at enhancing international learning in the absence of international travel. As Professor Yamaguchi and our colleague from IAU has stated, we are able to reach more people in the webinar format. It's just how to keep people engaged in the absence of international travel over the long term. Online forums were very popular, not only for networking, but just for catching up and support among member universities within ProsperNet. But also, one of the things that was really stressed about the importance of sharing information and being in a network like ProsperNet is how we can network to support for students, but especially international students. So what's working to support international students that are stranded away from their institution, as well as those that are in a foreign country and are unable to return to their home country. So networks like ProsperNet, a lot of the faculty responded, hope to have good insights that could be shared on how their campuses have dealt with this. And then looking even more into the future, how do we build back better? So ProsperNet members really stressed the importance of continuing communication and how universities need to be the conveners of knowledge. Even if the physical barriers are present, there is a huge stress on we need to keep communication pathways open, especially between international institutions. As Hilij was saying earlier, we don't just want Japanese universities communicating with Japanese universities. We want Japanese universities and exchanging with Indonesian universities, Indonesian with Australian. We don't want the silos to go back up just because borders aren't allowing transit at the moment. There is also, again, this desire for uniformity, how to actually create good capacity building tools to adapt to online environments, sets of best practices. And in addition, the need to address flexibility in funding cycles. So in the fact that the pandemic might go on longer, we need to look at ways to extend not only scholarships, but research grants. Of course, the need to address mental as well as physical health within student, staff, and faculty. There was a lot of concern within the network that mental health was being overlooked. And one of the most uniform calls from almost all respondents was the need for, we do really need to take this opportunity to reorient higher education. A number of you expressed that the status quo of modern higher ed has helped enable a non-sustainable world. Certainly not the cause, but we need to really look at how the leaders and the thinkers that we're producing need to kind of look at their impact, and we need to reassess this. So with that, I'll wrap up. Thank you so much, and I will turn it over back to my colleague, Dr. Tabukat, Professor Tabukat.
Interesting. Thank you very much, Philip, for sharing the results of the survey conducted by UNU-IAS to the ProsperNet community. And now to our next panelist. It gives me great pleasure to call on Professor Irfan Dwidya Priyambada to make a presentation. The floor is yours, Irfan.
Thank you, Mario. Good afternoon, colleagues. I would like to share our experience of dealing with the this pandemic. We in Universitas Gadjah Mada have a compulsory subject, student community service learning. This subject is 3 credits It was compulsory from 1973 and mobilized 4-year students to work with community to solve the issue related to the local problems. They work in team, 20 to 30 students, which consists of students from physical infrastructure, mostly from the Faculty of Engineering, Faculty of Natural Sciences, Socioeconomic and Culture, of course, faculties of Law, Literature, Politics and Social Sciences, as well as Economic. Community Health, students from Faculty of Medical Sciences, Dentistry, Pharmacy is there, and agricultural related field consists of students from Animal Sciences, Veterinary Medicine, Forestry, Agriculture, Fishery. They should be mixed students from those cluster to have to make one group, and then decided to work in a certain area. The students stay in the community with for 2 months, and they should find a real problem. They should find the potential of the community and solve the problem and improve to make the potential to be realized. And it's considered 3 elements. It should be improving the individual of the student themselves, also improving our university, institutionally, and community also as well. The program functions as media for transfer and transforming scale of the student, their creativity and innovation they obtain during their school or during the class for the benefit of community. Then the program runs based on principle of co-creation. It should not come from student, the program. It should be co-created between student, supervisor, which means lecturer, and also the community. And both sides should be benefited and co-finance. Student will not come with money, will not fund with fund, but they are coming with their knowledge as well with the their creativity and innovation. And the objective is to raise student empathy and care. This is the, I think, the key element of the SDGs, empathy and care. Implementing science and technology on the field. Increasing the spirit of teamwork and multidisciplinary work. Educating students as researchers, especially research on the community and the social sciences. Training students to work collaboratively with various sectors, like government officials, private sectors, NGO, and even community themselves, and promoting learning community. Once students come to the community know that they could learn a lot of things from the university. This is make the community learn something new from the student. We spread our students across the country of Indonesia, which might be equal from London to Moscow, from Aceh to Papua, which is the distance is like from London to Moscow. And every year we send around 260 group of students to the communities all across Indonesia. This is every year we send around 7,000 to 8,000 students. And they are engaged not only for 2 months, but in a certain location, we engage for 3 to 5 years. The first year, just mapping the potential, the problem of the community. Second year, we decide the program, the goals of each year with the community. Once they agree, then they can make a proposal for middle term development of the village and can be supported by government. Then the program can be executed for the 3rd year, 4th year, and 5th year. The supervisor, the lecturer, the same lecturer, but student may change because every year a student, different students come. And this is what we have done before the pandemic. We send the student to the community teach them, for example, here, teach them how to prepare for the feed of the goat. Here also, a lot of things of a problem that should be solved by students that can communicate with the people on the community and then directly talk with them and then solve their problem. Unfortunately, come with this pandemic, everything should be online. And also the HEL, we still have to work with the student community service learning because it's compulsory. We do not want to delay the students' graduation. Therefore, we change this activity of student community service learning into online. They start to talk to the people using, for example, WhatsApp, using the other kind of application, which is online. Then also, it's compulsory also for the student to serve, to assist the student where they live. So we start to have for example, a class using, instead of internet, we use handy-talkie. So the teacher in the class in the school using handy-talkie, and then spread the handy-talkie used by students from their home. Also, the student assist a student from undergrad, elementary school, primary school, secondary school, primary, secondary school, and also they have like a tutorial. Daring is online tutorial for mathematics, for science, for English, and other courses. We use also now they create Desa Win-Win Village application for villagers. This communicates people in the remote area or agricultural area with to communicate with university. So they can use this application to ask about the problem in the village, in the agricultural area, to university. And also there's education video for improving health, improving the hygiene of the community. This is made during this pandemic. Also, a lot of students making like how to cope with the hoax of the coronavirus, because people in Indonesia with their very limited knowledge, sometimes hoax is flooding the community, like that this kind of herbal herbs can cure the coronavirus, and many hoax are spreading. So students make how to deal with this kind of news or hoax that is spreading to the community. Also, how to deal with people, which is sometimes they are having a fever with no symptom at all. How is the virus is spread, and how is the tips to prevent the spread are made and then spread to the community. And here also not only for the pandemic, for the also for health only, but also how to reduce the use of water, because water is also we face also before several months before a dry season. So how to deal with water, limited water resources, and other like leaflet or booklet spread to the community. Even they make a student can make a detailed engineering design for making a facility in the village. How can they make, because they are not coming to the community? We have sent the student for 3 years before, so we have a lot of data already. But now we need to confirm. We need also to communicate with them. Is this really what you need to do? You need to have, or what you need to make, to build? So this thing can be, the data can be obtained or confirmed by internet, so online. So we make this.
May I remind you of the time,
Yep.
Irfan? Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is the last. Also, we gave it the product of this detailed engineering to the leader of the community with a lot, also many books and leaflet giving to the community from a student. So the problem we face is that some supervisors are still confused, not ready. First, this is the problem we face. Not all the community have the mean for communication, online communication. Then we have to deal. That is why we come with the Heditoki. The desire of students to face it, the community, because this is from their senior, the community service learning is something new experience for them. And the community desire to meet the student, because previous experience show that student coming, bringing new ideas to them. So this is what we should solve dealing with that. So thank you very much for the opportunity, Mario, and then give it back to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Irfan, for a clear presentation on how academic, research, and community engagement go hand in hand at UGM in Yogyakarta. Thank you so much. Now to the next panelist, it gives me great pleasure to call on Professor Deepak Sharma to make a presentation. The floor is yours, Deepak.
Thank you, Professor Tabuchanan. Allow me to share the screen, please. Are you able to see the screen, please? Okay. I presume the screen is visible to others.
It is visible.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll present a viewpoint on the role of higher education institutions in accelerating the transition towards achieving the Sustainable Development Goals in the backdrop of COVID pandemic. I will structure my thoughts on this topic under the following three simple headings. The historic role of higher education institutions in promoting sustainability. How has COVID pandemic affected the ability of the higher education institutions to deliver on sustainability? And what has been the response of the institutions, and what's a way forward? If we take a broad historic sweep of recent, let's say if I take a broad sweep of recent history, I beg your pardon, we will realize that higher education institutions, through their educational discourses, have played a pivotal role in shaping the contours of the debate on sustainability. For example, through recourse to the knowledge that resides in the disciplines of physical life and environmental sciences, the higher education institutions have contributed to defining the very concept of sustainability. And through the application of socioeconomic and political science constructs, they have been instrumental in developing analytical frameworks for facilitating policy dialogue and discussions and policy implementation. Also, most higher education institutions have taken concrete steps to institutionalize the sustainability agenda. For example, the word sustainability appears in the mission or vision statements of most universities. Most universities have formal mechanisms to bring together diverse interests spread across university departments, compartments, and other silos to develop a common sustainability work. Most universities have teaching and research programs on sustainability themes, and in the universities have built extensive alliances and networks with governmental and non-governmental interests and among themselves. And ProsperNet is one example of such a network. Well, by no means has this been a smooth journey for the universities. they have faced considerable challenges to establish their sustainability credentials, some internal from within universities and some external. Despite this opposition, the universities have somehow managed to carve out an educational sustainability niche for themselves. And just when we thought that we have finally arrived at some kind of a global consensus on sustainability and developed a semi-robust sustainability framework that could lead us onto a path to longer-term sustainability, came the COVID pandemic, causing massive across-the-board disruption, leaving unaffected no sphere of our lives. For the higher education sector, the pandemic has raised questions about the relevance and the viability of the traditional university model. At a much deeper level, the pandemic has cast aspersions on the very essence of modern education and has forced us to reflect on the soundness of its underlying precepts and assumptions. For example, the prevailing education model, in fact, the prevailing model of modernity from which the education model draws its imprimatur, caricatures human beings as homo economicus, view human-to-human relationship as transactional, gives humans uncontested rights over nature, and hence makes human-nature relationship as exploitative, places unqualified trust in technology as the ultimate arbiter of whatever ails us, and largely discounts the importance of cultures, contexts, traditions, customs, beliefs, and so on. And the list can go on. The point I wish to make here is that our mainstream modern day education, and indeed a dominant life model, is fundamentally incompatible with sustainability. Extending the argument a bit further, I'd say that the pandemic has challenged us and forced us to reflect on our basic premises and assumptions that I've just mentioned. Now, let's take a look at how have the universities responded to that. Well, they have taken several measures and initiatives, which can be broadly grouped under two headings. Measures to ensure the continuity of education, which in plain words means protecting the student base to ensure financial viability of in the immediate and near term. Some such measures include increasing online content of academic courses, creating opportunities for blended learning, hybrid education, creating modular and flexible courses, introducing innovative education delivery platforms, promoting lifelong learning, and so on. Some universities have gone further and have taken initiatives to transform their academic programs to bring them more in tune with the needs of our times. Although I must add that many of these academic initiatives were already in train prior to the onset of the pandemic. Now the questions for us are, will these initiatives ensure longer-term survival of the universities? And how will they affect the ability of our universities to contribute to the sustainability agenda? Well, my contention is, yes, these initiatives are necessary, but they are not sufficient to ensure a longer-term survival or relevance and advancement of sustainability agenda. My reasoning behind this contention is as follows. All measures to ensure continuity of education exclusively focus on improving the effectiveness of the mechanisms for the delivery of education. And the academic initiatives aimed at improving the attractiveness of the academic programs are essentially extensions of our prevailing education and societal paradigms, which, as I argued earlier a few moments ago, are fundamentally incompatible with sustainability. So the next logical question is, what should we do to ensure that the pandemic does not cripple our ability to accelerate transition towards achieving sustainability goals? I hold a view that we will need a complete metamorphosis in our thinking about the precepts on which our current system is founded, particularly on our relationship with nature. In short, we have to develop totally different types of educational narratives and supporting curricula and courses on sustainability, a curricula that frees us of our unquestioned adherence to precepts that are antithetical to sustainability. Well, this task may sound difficult, probably esoteric and utopian to some, but then we should also remind ourselves that this difficulty pales into insignificance if we realize how high the stakes are of continuing with existing mindsets. Moreover, we all know that utopias of yesterday are living realities of today. In short, the challenge is there, but so is the opportunity. I strongly believe that ProsperNet, represented by such an impressive array of institutions with rich cultural and intellectual endowments, is an excellent forum to develop the alternative narrative I spoke about. And AIT stands ready to participate in and provide an initial lead, if so needed, to progress this initiative that I believe will go a long way in helping us to accelerate the transition towards the achievement of the global sustainability agenda. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Deepak, Professor Sharma, for sharing your thoughts on the incompatibility of the current system, higher education systems, with sustainability and suggesting alternative educational narrative. There's a lot to unpack. I'm sure we will have time beyond the seminar to discuss these issues. So to our last but not least panelist, it gives me great pleasure to call on Professor Miki Sugimura to make a presentation. The floor is yours, Miki.
Thank you very much, Professor Tabukanon, and hello everyone. I'm very honored to have a presentation opportunity on behalf of the Sophia University. Please let me share my screen first. Yes, thank you very much. Today, I'd like to talk about the diversified qualitative learning in international higher education, because our Sophia universities, we are also involving in the international higher education network. And this time we finally joined this ProsperNet. So we are very happy and share some experiences. Before moving on to the main part, please let me introduce my university a little bit. Our Sophia University was established in the 1913 by the Jesuit mission, and our motto is men and women for others with others. This Catholic mission brings very similar kind of the awesome network, cooperation, and diversity. These points are very close to the Sustainable Development Goals, so that's why we are now involving in this kind of activities. These are the portrait of our university, and we have a very diversified university. We are now the 9 undergraduate faculties and 29 departments, and some of the departments are conducted in English, especially the Faculty of Liberal Arts started in 1949, and we have a long history to teach in English. Also, the graduate school, we have 25 programs, including the Global Environmental Studies, Global Studies, also taught in English. But nowadays, our university's motto, the internationalization, has been a little suspended due to the COVID-19 issues, and we are very facing complicated, challenging. Of course, not only our universities, all the universities in the world now have been struggling with this kind of point. For the internal matters, of course, university management, or the change of teaching and learning style, and even the research style, we need to rethink or reconsider how we can motivate the professors or the students to learning. The external matters, of course, all the student mobility and the faculty mobility has been suspended, so we need to ask what kind of the next strategy over the internationalization. But today, I would like to emphasize the importance of the global governance for collaboration, like the ProsperNet and also the international higher education sector. Because the point is the comprehensive internationalization. This concept started not only at this moment, but also before the COVID-19. Some of the aspects of the internationalization should be needed to be rethink, because we need to think about the sustainable development goals. In that case, what kind of the roles and responsibility of the universities or the higher education sector. In that mean, I'd like to share some experiences of Sophia University focusing on those points. Today, I would like to introduce the 4 practices, especially focusing on this Southeast Asia, closely related to the ProsperNet. The first one is Sophia AIMS program. So this AIMS program is ASEAN International Mobility for Students, and this was organized by the Simio Righthead in 2009, but finally, now the Japan and South Korea, those countries also included this network. Very fortunately, Sophia also could join in there, and we have a topic of the transdisciplinary human development studies, which started in the 2013. Now the professor of Gajah Mada University had a wonderful presentation. We had a strong connection with them, or Ateneo de Manila, Chulalongkorn, UKM, De La Salle, Philippines. Those are very wonderful universities, are always supported to us. This project is quite recently, we had a wonderful discussion online. Our university's the Bangkok office now is corporatized, called the Sophia Global Education and Discovery, started an interesting program called Learning with Southeast Asia, Creating Together Resilient and Sustainable Future Society, in cooperation with 5 universities from 4 countries. For about 180 students join here and can exchange are the current issues and try to seek for the good solution in collaboration. So when we try to create the global learning community in Southeast Asia to develop our sustainable future, might be very interesting. And this is a kind of new way for us to explore the new possibility of the higher education sector. Another new program also started in Sophia. This program called is Sophia Program for Sustainable Futures. As I already told you, we had a long history to teach in English, but these programs are conducted also in English, focusing on the sustainability studies at the journalism, education, sociology, economics, management, international relations, and area studies. Those 6 departments now cooperated together to share some subject to deliver a kind of sustainable studies to those students. Besides the Faculty of Liberal Arts, Faculty of Science and Technology called Green Science and Green Engineering. Those kind of English track program is just not only just teaching in English, but also trying to push the more sustainable futures studies should be very important for us to forward the concept, focusing on the sustainability studies. One more point is a COIL, Collaborative Online International Learning, also now running at Sophia. This new project started in 2018, and at the time, nobody expected to such a situation under the COVID-19. But the Sophia, with kind of support of the Japanese government, we collaborate with Ochanomizu University, is one of the female national university, and University Shizuoka. This is a public university. With 3 universities in Japan collaborate together to conduct this program. At the very beginning of the stage, this program designed to combine between the Japanese universities, the US universities, but nowadays this seems to be a little expanded. And this is one of the example, one of our faculty members of nursing department of Sophia coordinated a kind of collaboration program with one university from Mongol and another university from US, and also University of Shizuoka collaborate together. The subject was very interesting because, as you can see, the students' voice, they said, yes, it was a pleasure for me as a nursing student who usually has less opportunities for study abroad to experience such an international session. This means not only COVID-19, but also the before the COVID-19, the nursing department students always a little difficult for them to have opportunity to study abroad. But nowadays, through this kind of collaboration, the COIL, we can find another new way for the exploration of our program. A summary of this exchange program focusing on some point, but today I'd like to focus on one more point on the right side corner. The JWL collaboration program, this is a Jesuit university's mission, and some US university and Japanese university now deliver the program for the refugee camps. Why we send our program to refugee camps? They're a kind of the marginalized person, and they need to learn more through the kind of the COIL or online education. This program also started before COVID-19, but nowadays all the people in the world in the same situation. We cannot move anywhere. We must stay at their home country, but still they need to connect somewhere. So that's why we would like to try to push this kind of program more. These are examples which are already conducted in the SOPIR from last spring semester, and now we are developing the more programs, this one. Finally, I would like to share my idea how we can way forward towards a flexible and diversified qualitative learning in international higher education for sustainable development. Of course, we are now, it's a very difficult time, but we need to explore and cannot stop the student learning. In that case, we always consider the research development and the student learning output and outcome. In that case, we need to assure the quality of our learning through the critical thinking, creativity, innovation, diversity, inclusion, and sustainability. Those norms are already highlighted in the Sustainable Development Goals. So now the higher education sector, that's importance, how we can put the student as a center of learning, but not only education, also based on the research, we need to promote the good international cooperation to realize the new possibility of a higher education sector. Thank you very much for your kind attention, and I'd like to share our experiences with you. Thank you for this wonderful opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Nikki, for the very interesting presentation. Quote, men and women for others, with others, is such an impressive mission of your university, reflecting collaboration, and which was also reflected in the collaboration you have with other universities in the region and in the world. So that completes the set of presentations from our panelists. And so let's move on to the question and answer session of this panel discussion. We have 2 rounds of Q&A. The first round of questions will be asked by the moderator. The second round will be coming from the audience through the Q&A box. And for the first round, I need a very brief answers to the questions. To IAU, HEls, you mentioned several challenges towards achieving the SDGs through your HESD program. If there is one major challenge, what would that be? And the follow-up question is, do you think the short-term impacts and responses by higher education institutions will become the new normal in the medium and long term? Will the short-term responses become the new normal in the longer run? Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mario, for these very comprehensive questions. The first one about the challenges to HESD. I think indeed that in this period where people have to make very harsh decisions on where they can put their energy, that is where sustainable development is probably hit hard, because it has had a hard time to get at the center of everything that the university is already doing. But despite that, I saw the beautiful examples from Gajah Mada, from AIT, from Sofia University. You've managed to move sustainable development into your strategic priorities. And thus there's less risk, I would say, for sustainable development to fall off the agenda. Still, there is a bit of a competition between the different major roles of a university, and the major and the very questions that arise are how to survive, how to financially support all the operations of the university, how to make sure that we maintain our students in the university, how do we maintain quality of education, and where people do not always see the link between those big questions and sustainable development. That is a case that needs to be made. So I would say that would be my answer to that one. And your question was, are the short-term impacts of COVID-19 to stay for the longer term? Certain things, yes, and there are also opportunities. I think that the move online was seen as something that many people were resisting in the past. And that we've seen that it is possible that many of the things that people did not know, and the other speakers have explained that very forcefully, they have seen the opportunities as well, and the quality that was possible, and it may allow to address some of the issues that we also faced. So inequality of access, distances that we could not manage and we could not address either. The opportunity to take part. I think, Philip, you made that point very strongly as well. So these are real opportunities that will stay long-term, yet other more negative parts where we also see that some of those connections that we have are easier with those who we have met once. They're easier with networks that we know of. And so the innovative part of getting connected is something that we will have to pay special attention to, so that we don't narrow our field, but open it up very broadly. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, HEls. You mentioned Philip. Now, this is to Philip. From the survey, some ProsperNet member universities shared responses on educational inequalities, Philip, which you also presented in a slide. But these are ad hoc short-term actions. These are ad hoc. So my question is, are there areas that require systemic changes into the medium and long term, such as changing system, the education system structures? So can you share your thoughts on this, Philip?
Well, thank you, Mario. I think that a lot of universities are just kind of responding in the short term, but there have been some early indications that they are starting to pivot towards medium to long-term modalities. The long-term consequences, I think, especially in countries where COVID has hit hard, universities really are being forced to reckon with the mental health of students and staff. I think we're going to definitely see a more integrated approach to that, not only because of the pandemic, but in response to just general practice. Also, while I think a lot of universities are really grateful that we've had online tools to move to classes, we've come very quickly to the realization that we need other forms of engagement for when online isn't an option. So I think some of the universities in ProsperNet indicated, the digital divide is still very real, even in the richest countries. And we're going to need to look at ways to address that long term. And a lot of that is going to be shaped by different realities on the ground. But I think one of the big challenges is that in the long term, we are looking at shifting to still a mixture of online and other modalities, according to what data we have.
Still mute, Mario. You're still mute.
Yes, you have heard from the presentation of HEls, IAU, that from their survey, they found out that the consequences on community engagement of the pandemic is mixed. There are pluses and minuses. And in your experience, can you cite some examples of pluses and minuses? And what are the barriers towards student engagement in communities? Irfan.
Yeah. So some opportunity come with this pandemic. For example, we never think before that we can do or assist people in remote area through online. But now we prove that, for example, for making a long-term planning of the village, we need the engagement of all the member of the community, which we call it as a more how to say. So everybody is giving their voice. When we have a meeting in a village or in a community, usually leader of the community take a very offensive or even very strong position that make other member of the community cannot say, cannot give their voice. But now, using such kind of online, which you can have a question and answer directly, one person to one person, so we can get more idea from the community member. So that is what I did not realize before. But now we can do it by that way. This is one of the positive that. Second, that many universities across Indonesia need to be improved, and they ask Gajah Mada University to assist them. Before also, we never think that to give like a long distance learning with them. But now we realize that we can assist many universities from remote areas in Indonesia to have join my class, for example, through an online. So this is an opportunity, but of course there's also some difficulty, especially when the internet is not available to a remote area, especially a remote island in the border between Indonesia and Philippines, for example. So we have to think also. We are thinking also now to provide them with the access, even with the border in Indonesia and Singapore, for example. I visited the village, and then we are thinking on how to open access for them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Irfan. I keep referring to the two surveys because these are good basis for discussion. In the IAU and ProsperNet surveys, it was found out that the most affected or impacted by the pandemic are internationalization, international programs and research. It was shown, very hard evidence. Now, EIT programs are all international. How has EIT overcome, Professor Sharma, this gigantic challenge during the pandemic? How did you do it? If you can share it. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Tabuchanan. This question is indeed pertinent for EIT, as nearly 70% of our students are international. How did we deal with this challenge posed by the pandemic? Well, initially, at the outset of the pandemic, we, much like other institutions, switched from face-to-face to online teaching. Concurrently, however, realizing that an overwhelming majority of our students for the fall semester will come from other countries, we took steps to develop a state-of-art hybrid education delivery platform in the form of smart classrooms that are capable of providing as close to face-to-face education experience as is possible to our students, irrespective of their physical location. The fact that our student numbers have increased in this fall semester as compared to last year, a feat in itself, if we look at the global trends, is also a testimony to the effectiveness of our response to the COVID challenge. Thank you, Professor Drapuken.
Thank you very much. And to our last but not least panelists, I have noticed from all the 5 presentations that Professor Sugimura has stressed the importance of collaboration. Collaboration. You talk about governance for collaboration within and without the university. I would like to ask you, how did you coordinate with faculties and departments in your university to come up with an institutional response to the pandemic? And has your university collaborated with other institutions in Japan and in the region beyond? Have you done that? Professor Sugimura.
Yes, Professor Mario, thank you very much. Very important but very difficult questions. We always manage how to collaborate to not only among our universities, but also the outside universities. The point is, maybe, first of all, I think we had better share the same aim and a kind of the plan and how we can aim to the future possibilities for collaboration. So at least in our university, we, as I already told you, that there are the 9 faculties, but we try to explain what direction our planning is aiming for. And if some professors are interested in such kind of the project, we like to ask them to involve in that project. And now we can start some collaborative online international learning, or those professors trying to make another network outside the universities. So maybe individual, the contribution should be very important. But another point is maybe institutional coordination should be very important when we think about the collaboration. For example, when we introduced the kind of the AIMS program, at the time, of course, first of all, some professors are not willing to involve in this one because the professors are always very busy and they need to think about the additional work. But finally, they got it because those kind of collaboration can bring another new possibilities for the student learning, and not only learning, but also the teachers' research activities are also expanded to this network. So if we can consider the student side and the professor side, if both a kind of the orientation can meet together, might be more impossibility for us to promote this kind of activities. Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Sugimura. Now, I'm trying to open the Q&A box now and see some questions that might be important for the panelists to respond to. The first question is to IAU. Now, the question is, for countries that are not digitally advanced, what opportunities IAU provides to them? HEls, can you unmute? Yes.
Yes. Yes. Thank you for that question. I saw it in the Q&R. I think it is, IAU is providing for tools that universities then can pick up, but we're also advocating to governments to make sure that the digital transformation that is required today is taken very seriously at national level. Because obviously the IAU as a network, or any network, will not be the provider of the internet facilities. But we can certainly make the case for governments to ensure that better connectivity is the future for the many. And that is how we are very much involved with Professor Yumi Yamaguchi as well in the Futures of Education project initiative at UNESCO, where we make that case very strongly. for governments to pick it up, for advocacy for better connectivity everywhere. A second important initiative is the Global Education Coalition by UNESCO, that I invite the person who was asking the question, I think her name was Aisha Maksud Abbasi. I would recommend that that the person also looks there, because what UNESCO has done is collating information about providers offering free support for now to look into options for better connectivity for the short term, but certainly looking into long-term solutions as well.
Thank you. Thank you. That's clear. Now, the next one is not a question, but a request to make to kindly share the survey links of the two surveys. So if that can be available, then
yes.
The links to the IAU survey and to the PROSPERNet survey. That's easy.
Yes, the survey is completed, but we can share the results of the survey. So
thank you for that. Thank you very much.
And what I may add, Mario,
UNU-IAS.
I would like to inform as well that we have 3 surveys in line. The first one was done in the spring. The second one is now being drafted together also with UNU-IAS and with many associations like the European University Association, the Association of Arab Universities, the Association of Latin American Universities, the ACE in the US, etc. So we're collectively building the next coming up survey so that it is asking the questions that will be of interest to the institutions and to governments. So we really want to craft a questionnaire that will try and actually identify the issues at stake, the solutions that are out there. So that's the second one. It will be launched in early January. And the third one will be long-term impact survey, looking at the long-term impact of COVID-19, because that's where we are as well.
And many
so I will share the link to the first one.
Exactly. And many of our audience are also members of IAU, probably, so they should respond to the survey, the coming surveys. Yes. That's interesting. Now, here is a question. It is not written addressed to whom, but I think this is pertinent to AIT. This question, to what extent the online webinar format delivery will ensure quality and attractiveness of scientific and technologically oriented education? Maybe this is good for training, short-term training, capacity building, but not for education, especially if you are dealing with laboratories and very much high-tech equipment and so on and so forth. So how do you, to what extent can this be applicable? Professor Sharma. Would you please unmute, Professor Sharma?
Yeah, thank you. Yes, I think the question has an element of truth there, that the webinars are more for interactions and probably Q&A sessions like the one we are having now. When it comes to labs and so on, it does pose a difficulty. We had recognized this difficulty, and we had, in fact, over the last 3 to 4 months, initiated some moves here whereby we started to use artificial intelligence and other technologies to develop simulations rather than those physical based lab experiments and so on. So technology is helping us to an extent, but I'm sure there is a limit to some of the experimentation work that goes on in lab, especially when it involves use of chemicals and aquaculture things and so on. So we will have to rethink as to the extent to which we can use latest advances in AI to overcome some of these difficulties. And beyond that, probably we will still need a face-to-face contact to do the rest. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much. Now, the next question is a general one, and I think it is relevant for all the panelists. The question is, what are your views on paradigm shift on educational model post-COVID? Now, I would give a chance first to UGM and then Sophia. Irfan, would you comment on this issue? Can you?
So in the future, we have a chance learning from this difficult situation, that we can somehow might be not fully online, but we use this technology in several step of education to spread the ESD through such so not only by like a conventional classes, but also we can spread the idea that the teachings materials and even the teaching itself to other university, to other which need our assistance more aggressively. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Professor Sugimura, would you like to comment on it?
Yeah, yes, thank you very much for giving an opportunity to respond to it. Yeah, I want to mention, if I may add one more point, is maybe it's a kind of the non-traditional learning style. Quite recently, as you know, the Tokyo Convention on the quality assurance issues by UNESCO has been issued, and now many Asian and Pacific regions, countries, government, and also the Higher Education Institute are quite concerned on this matter. In the convention, they emphasize a kind of the traditional learning and non-traditional learning, and which means includes a various kind of way of learning and teaching style, including the co-op or the online or virtual education hybrid style. But more importantly is we need to think about the codified learning and teaching system. So even if we can expand our good network, if we cannot keep the quality of the education, it is not good. And more point is, so far the education always seek for the kind of expanding of the equality, but not only equality, the equity. The learning system should be very important, as already the Sustainable Development Goals mentioned in the Goal 4 or Goal 4.7. So now in the universities, the higher education sector, that's importance on how we can keep a kind of the new style of learning with qualified and more equitable the learning style. I think it might be a very important point for us to think about in the future generation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You have responded to the questions. There are more questions here, but my suggestion would be to, we'll share that with you. And if we know the source of the questions, we can link you with those audience members. So with your permission, I would like to maybe end up the Q&A. Are there any, let me see. Yes, we will take these questions from the Q&A and then share it with all the panelists, and maybe we can continue the conversation even beyond this webinar. Thank you. That's the privilege of the moderator. Thank you so much. Yes. So with that, we will end up the Q&A session. And now to wrap up, please allow me to share my take. As I heard from you and as I prepared for this webinar, the theme of this webinar is sustainability in higher education, accelerating transition towards achieving the SDGs during and after the COVID pandemic. There are 3 circles in the Venn diagram. If we draw a Venn diagram, and there's an intersection, the SDGs, the higher education sector, and COVID-19. The ESG for 2030 agenda, which is the framework, that we are adopting utilizes ESD, which is an integral element of SDG 4 as a key enabler for all the other SDGs that the COVID-19 has come the way to compress the efficacy of education as an enabling mechanism as learned from the IEU and UNU-IAS prosperity surveys. But there are two sides of the impact. COVID, while its impact for many prosperity-related targets in the SDGs is negative, the impact for many planet-related SDG targets is positive. So there is a lesson to learn, demonstrating yet again that the current ways of achieving prosperity are in conflict with the health of the planet. So it is the role of higher education institutions to, through its programs, to enable the so-called green economy. We should not forget in 2012, which is the decoupling of prosperity and environmental degradation declaration. All the panelists have stated one way or the other that the world of higher education has been disrupted. All has been disrupted by the pandemic and the weaknesses of the existing systems of service, which leads to rethink, resign, and reorient higher education. The panelists also stated that. And it should be possible to convert crisis into opportunity and adapt the Build Back Better scheme of things. That I also agree. And at the end, I would also see from all the presentations that higher education institutions must adapt a whole institutional approach as implied by your messages that requires coordination across various faculties, colleges, and departments in addressing education before we could say that we could achieve sustainability in higher education. So with those concluding words, which hopefully has wrapped up this webinar, it is said that all good things come to an end, and that's our discussion as well. I am profoundly grateful to all for your participation. Without you, this webinar would have not been possible. We thank all the panelists for the fascinating presentations and discussions, and we all deserve a big round of virtual applause. With that, I pass on the floor back to the webinar master of ceremony, Ms. Konishi, Miki Konishi, and over to you, Miki, for the concluding session. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Professor Tapkanon. So thank you, moderator, and all the panelists for the fruitful and stimulating discussion. And now may I call on Dr. Akio Takemoto, Program Head of UNU-IAS, for his closing remarks.
Thank you very much. Please. Thank you. Distinguished participants, it is a great pleasure for me to make closing remarks at the ProsperNet webinar on sustainability in higher education. First, I'd like to express my sincere thanks to all panelists for providing valuable presentation and comments for accelerating transition towards achieving the SDGs during and after the COVID-19 pandemic. I also thank all for participating in the webinar from the world in different time zones. Since 2008, ProsperNet has been developed as an alliance of leading universities in the Asia-Pacific region, committed to integrating sustainable development into postgraduate courses and curricula. As a result of the joint meeting of the 14th General Assembly and 20th Board meeting, number of ProsperNet member universities has reached 50, I'd like to congratulate this successful outcome of the regional network to promote the ESD. I hope the ProsperNet will be further developed both in the number and quality, which will contribute to achievement of the UN Education for Sustainable Development for 2030. Lastly, I highly appreciate the continuous financial and policy support of the Ministry of the Environment of Japan. Again, I'd like to thank all participants for your excellent contribution today. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Takemoto. Before ending this webinar, please allow me to make announcements. First, we'll send a brief questionnaire to all of the participants after this webinar. So we would be very much grateful if you could take a few minutes to send us your feedback and comments about today's webinar. This webinar has been recorded, and the recording and also the report will be uploaded and posted to our ProsperNet website. Our website provides various informations, including the latest news, publication, as well as joint research projects conducted by member universities. So please feel free to browse around. This is the end of the ProsperNet webinar on sustainability in higher education. Thank you very much for your participation and looking forward to having you in our future webinars. Again, let me just thank to all of you and stay safe. Thank you very much.